Our first question for this evening is, voters are currently gathering signatures to put a question on a future state ballot to repeal Mass General Laws, Chapter 40B. Do you support or oppose that effort? And Ms. Murphy, you may go first. You have 1 minute.
I don't believe that repealing Chapter 40B is the answer. I think it's come out of frustration that petition is going forward because of the inability of the legislature to reach a consensus to repair its faults. The fact is that in the town of Hingham, with I think possibly one exception, which at the end of the day has not really been as kind of terrible a result as people feared it would be, that Hingham has been very able to manage the projects that have come in, including promoting our own projects in a way that are responsible and reflective of the character of the community. And so at this point, I would not support a full repeal of Chapter 40B.
Thank you. Mr. Patch?
Well, that's sort of a loaded question because unfortunately 40B is one of those laws that it's the right thing, but the mechanics of it just don't work. And sometimes I think people get frustrated with trying to correct the flaws in a statute. And as Susan said, the frustration is the legislature just doesn't seem to be listening. And one of the basic problems is that I have a little blurb here that says that as of 2009, 7% of the housing stock in Hingham is considered affordable. So 10% is where we have to go. But the basic problem is there's a lot of flaws, and the developers are very shrewd. They take advantage of it. They pay attorneys to figure out how to take advantage of it. And one of the sometimes, again, you have to force a repeal of something and start fresh. And I think that's where the view is coming from in this petition. And I just want to say one thing that I really find a flaw with the statute is that it doesn't require the affordable housing to be affordable in perpetuity. And
Okay.
that causes a problem.
Thank you. Our second question is, recent internal restructuring appears to have melded the planning function with code enforcement. Do you believe this is a wise choice? And Mr. Patch, you may go first.
Can you repeat that question?
Absolutely. Recent internal restructuring appears to have melded the planning function with code enforcement. Do you believe this was a wise choice?
That's not my understanding of why there was this reorganization. I think basically it was driven by trying to see if we can have a more efficient town government, basically in response to the crisis that we're facing and revenue shortfalls. I have all the respect in the world for Katie Lacey. She's a wonderful person, and she does a great job. And she basically, what they did is they restructured and said, how can we make this, my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, Susan, how can we make it more efficient, better serve the residents of the town? So I really don't have any problem with that.
Thank you. Ms. Murphy, you have 1 minute, and if you could speak up, some people in the back are having problems hearing. Well, everyone.
That's unusual for me.
Also, I am a little bit confused about the wording in the question. The restructuring was for the reasons which Tom mentioned, which is a kind of town-wide effort to consolidate and have groups working together for more efficient use of budget resources and more efficient responses to the people of the town of Hingham. The building commissioner is elected or hired by the Board of Selectmen and works cooperatively with the planning board and the ZBA, and that is where enforcement comes through the building commissioner. But I think that the communication is improving greatly due to the consolidation of the offices, of the departments.
Thank you. The third question we have tonight is, considering the tax benefits of potential commercial development of the area by Route 3, where do you stand on development in South Hingham, and what is your position on the possibility of the MWRA developing a sewer district there. Ms. Murphy, you may go first.
The area up in South Hingham that's within the industrial district and from a zoning standpoint is known as the South Hingham Overlay District, has been zoned for many years for various types of commercial development. The planning board has rejected on numerous occasions any attempts to convert residential areas to commercial development, but given our tightening budget concerns, it makes sense to maximize the areas of the town that are already zoned for commercial purposes. The sewer district, as currently proposed and going before a town meeting, would be to serve that industrial district area and some very small outlying residential districts out by Sharp Street. And I think both are a good idea and good for the town.
Thank you. Mr. Patch?
Well, I have anybody wants to look at it after, it's a conceptual plan for the proposed sewer district. And basically what it has is, it includes the industrial park, Derby Street shops, the properties that's essentially adjacent to Recreation Drive, and a huge parcel of land that's basically land developed between Old Derby Street and about halfway to Whiting Street, which is in the most part owned by the Bristols. And they have expressed a desire to develop that property. Again, you have to balance your tax base. It can't be all open space. It can't be all recreation. You got to have a healthy mix in order to be able to sustain the town. So it's a fact of life that we have to do commercial development. And the MWRA going in there just makes sense because it's right over the line in Weymouth. In fact, I think they're champing at the bit because they want more revenue, and they also want some to provide the water up there.
Okay, thank you. And we do have a fourth question. How effective has the town been in obtaining developer mitigation? Mr. Patch, you may go first.
Well, that's a tough one because you essentially, legally, it's very difficult to exact mitigation from a developer without getting yourself in a position of being sued. So basically, there's a sort of a waltz that goes on in the process to try to get the developer to show their cards and what they're prepared to do for the town in order to get the economic benefit of the development. Yeah, maybe that hasn't been done in the past as much as it should have. My experience is that developers are willing to give up a heck of a lot more because they're making good returns, or else they wouldn't be doing this investment. So I think you really have to stand up to the developers and go toe-to-toe with them and try to get them to give you the most bang for the buck.
Thank you.
10 years ago and for a few years after that, when there was starting to be a large onslaught of new development in the town, the planning board did not feel that there was sufficient contributions. Around, a few years in, town meeting approved a change in the zoning that allowed it for binding site plan review. And the fact of the matter is that contributions or mitigation by developers is permitted if there's a reasonable nexus or connection between the project and the impacts they're causing. And over the last 5 or 6 years, what we've been very successful to do is we got $500,000 in cash to do improvements to Beale Street. With the Bone and Muscle Center that's coming up in South Hingham, they will be funding a traffic light for that very dangerous intersection at the industrial park.